Wythnos, therefore, his questions to the First Minister, and the first question is from Jenny Rathbone.
Diolch, Llywyd. What is the First Minister's assessment of the implications for Wales of no trade deal with the EU?
Well, no deal is the worst deal. We know that no deal would mean trading under World Trade Organization rules. Nobody wants that on either side of the debate. And we know, of course, that would put in place significant barriers to Welsh exports into our biggest and most important market.
Thank you, First Minister. I find it difficult to understand how Theresa May continues to say that no deal would be better than a bad deal. Because I'd struggle to understand what the difference is. This is something that the journalists don't seem to have asked her or don't have the opportunity to ask her. But I've read that some experts say that it could cost as much as £45 billion if we crash out of the EU, compared with half that if we come out with a negotiated deal. So what is the First Minister's assessment of what would happen to Wales and Welsh trade with Europe if there is no deal?
Well, 67% of our exports go to the European market. Any obstacle that would be faced by exporters is bound to be bad for them. Any extra costs are bound to be bad for them. And that's why it's hugely important that Brexit is handled in a realistic way, not the naivety that we have seen from some saying, well, the Germans will never allow WTO rules to operate. I think there has to be realism there. But above all else, we have to secure a Brexit that is a sensible Brexit, and above all else, one that does not affect in a negative way the economy of Wales.
David Melding.
First Minister, I'm sure you agree that we should be aiming for a good deal for the United Kingdom, a good deal for Wales, and a good deal for the European Union. And I'm very confident that that is what will happen. But can I just refer to the UK Economic Outlook that was published in November 2016, which did identify, and this was on the trends before Brexit, that our exports to EU markets were likely to go down to about 37% by 2030. That's a UK figure, not just Wales. And it was very important that we also develop those other markets outside Europe that are closest to us, particularly North America, Africa and the Middle East. And I hope that your trade policy will focus on these markets, as well as, of course, taking advantage of whatever the relationships we now secure with the EU.
Very much so. We work for markets anywhere and everywhere for Welsh produce. I remember when I was Rural Affairs Minister, I spent much of my time getting Welsh lamb exports to the United Arab Emirates, for example, and we know that lamb is exported around the world. But we shouldn't think that it's a choice between accessing the European market or accessing other markets. The European market is much bigger than the US market, and the US is further away, whereas the EU, of course, will share a land border with us. The European market will continue to be our most important market for many, many years to come, which is why, of course, it's so important to get a good deal that benefits all and, above all else, allows us to sell without any kind of obstacle in that European market.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywyd. Well,
Thank you, Llywyd. Well, according to the leaflet I received from the Liberal Democrats on Monday in Aberystwyth, we, Plaid Cymru and Labour, are in bed with the Tories and UKIP on a hard Brexit deal. Now, I would be interested to know what kind of cabinet discussions you've had with the Liberal Democrats on achieving this extreme Brexit, but in the hope that you're not going to deliver that, can I ask you how we can get to a position where tariff-free access to a single market from agriculture to manufacturing in Wales with our partners in Europe can be achieved without maintaining some sort of membership of the single market?
I don't wish to interfere in the politics of Ceredigion. I did see what Mark Williams had said. I don't accuse Plaid Cymru of being in favour of an extreme Brexit at all. But how can we ensure that an extreme Brexit doesn't happen? Well, the white paper shows the way, and that white paper has been agreed between three parties in this place. And to me, that demonstrates or shows us the way forward as regards how Brexit should be implemented over the ensuing years.
Adam.
Question 2, Adam Price.
The Welsh Government now have all the information it needs to make a decision on whether to provide the financial support requested by the promoters of the Circuit of Wales.
We are awaiting some reports from our external advisers to enable us to complete the comprehensive due diligence process, but we will be in a position to take a decision before the end of the month.
I think people will draw their own conclusion, First Minister, on why this decision has been pushed beyond the general election. But on the wider theme of openness, I've been told in written answers by the Cabinet Secretary for Economy, Infrastructure and Skills that the idea of an 80% government guarantee, which was at the heart of the proposal that you rejected last year, was first suggested by the company in mid-April 2016. Now, that isn't accurate, First Minister. It was your government, with the direct knowledge of your own private office, that suggested this as an alternative to a 100% guarantee in the first week of April. So would you now take the opportunity to correct the record?
Well, I can say that the model that is being examined now is not that model. It's a wholly different model. He makes the insinuation that somehow this has been pushed back for some insidious reason. I can tell him that, unlike him, we do conduct proper due diligence. People expect that, and people in Glenegwent expect that. They want to be sure, and we want to see this project delivered, but it has to be delivered on a sustainable basis. They would expect us in Glenegwent to look at this very carefully in order to make sure that the project stands up on its own for years to come. We've received the majority of the reports already. The remaining reports we expect to see in the course of this week. There is no strange thing going on there. That is because we awaited further information from the heads of the Valleys Development Corporation themselves. We don't expect any more information from them now. And I can say that officials are preparing a comprehensive project appraisal report. There will be a cabinet paper drafted and the decision will be taken before the end of the month.
Lynn Needle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, I very much welcome your positive statement about wanting the circuit to succeed. And as you're aware, some of the biggest names in automotive engineering and research have written to you, Aston Martin, TVR, Tails, demonstrating their confidence in the project and urging a swift, positive decision. Are you able to confirm today what date the Cabinet is likely to meet to make a decision on this?
I would expect the Cabinet to meet in the course of the next fortnight, with a decision being taken, of course, at that Cabinet meeting. That is the plan at this moment in time. We want to get this dealt with, obviously, as the people of Glenegwent would as well. I understand the great enthusiasm for the project, but we also have to temper that, of course, with ensuring that the project stacks up on its own, that the level of risk is acceptable, that there is substantial investment from the private sector, and that's what we've been working with the Circuit of Wales team. And we want to be in a position where we can look at a sustainable model in a fortnight's time. And as I say, what I would like to do is deliver the Circuit of Wales, but we have to make sure that the model is robust, and that's the point that we're at now.
Mohammed Ashkar.
Officer, by your Cabinet Secretary on 17th of May, he stated that due diligence is an important part of consideration in financing any project and that he would not shortcut that process. Recently, it was claimed that the Circuit of Wales project could be lost to Scotland if the Welsh Government did not make a decision soon. Will you confirm that scaremongering such as this will not result in decision-making taken until the most rigorous assessment of the viability and economic benefit of this project has been made or completed by your government?
Well, people would expect us as a government to examine any project, particularly one of this importance and size, very in great detail, to make sure that we can be satisfied if we are being asked to deliver support. And of course, private sector investors will do exactly the same thing. And I say, on these benches, we want to see the project move forward, but it is important for all concerned, including the people of Glenegwent, that the fullest examination of the proposal is done in order to provide reassurance for the future.
Cwestiynau.
Questions now from the party leaders. Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Arty-Davies.
Officer. First Minister, could I could I identify myself with the comments that you made about the tragedies in London earlier on in the week? Obviously, we do stand shoulder to shoulder with the citizens of London and Manchester, and ultimately, by getting about our normal way of life, we are defeating these terrorists, these thugs who are inflicting such terrible, terrible tragedies on some of our communities. And whilst we might live in Wales, we stand shoulder to shoulder with the communities in London and anywhere else where people feel under threat. I would like to ask you, with that in mind, that the general election now on Thursday, obviously people will be voting on commitments made by the parties. And you yesterday, in your role as First Minister, said that Labour, if they were to win on Thursday, would get rid of the Barnett formula. Yet today, we've had Scottish Labour firmly coming out and saying that there are no plans to get rid of the Barnett formula. Who's right, Kezia Dugdale or Carwyn Jones?
Well, I've spoken to Kezia Dugdale. What we do know is the Tories would take money away from both Wales and Scotland, and that is something that is pretty clear in terms of the manifesto. The situation is quite simply this: that upon the election of a Labour government, that Barnett would remain in place in the short term. There would then be a long-term funding formula put in place according to the needs of the different nations and regions of the UK, ensuring, of course, that no part of the UK is unfairly disadvantaged. That means that Barnett would come to an end at that time. I wonder where the commitment from the Conservatives is to ensure fair funding for Wales.
Well, as well you know, the agreement between the Welsh Government and the Westminster Government put the funding floor in place that was warmly endorsed by your Finance Minister only in December of last year. 13 years, you did nothing. But that's not quite what the Scottish Conservatives are saying, and I offered you the opportunity to actually clarify your position, because you were very robust last night in saying that the Barnett formula would be scrapped. Actually, what the Scottish Labour Party are saying is that there will be no scrapping of the Barnett formula, and this is their words, not to scrap the Barnett formula, and all that is merely being proposed in the next Parliament, these are their words, is a long-term consultation to look at funding of the UK allocates around the public expenditure that comes from Westminster to ensure that it reflects the nations and regions of the United Kingdom. That's their words, that is. That isn't getting rid of the Barnett formula at all. Aren't you misleading the people of Wales with your comments yesterday, First Minister?
That is exactly what it means. If there is a new formula in place, that is the end of Barnett at that point. Of course, in the short term, Barnett would remain because there's nothing else in place at that time. But we want to make sure that Wales receives fair funding. Yes, we came to an agreement on funding. That's because the UK government resolutely refused to look at funding as far as Wales is concerned. It was a compromise position. We have never changed our position as a government that the Barnett formula has run towards the end of its life, and now is the time to start planning for a new formula that will reflect the proper needs of the different nations and regions of the UK as they are now, not as they were in 1979.
First Minister, you were very clear last night in that you were saying you were scrapping the Barnett formula, full stop. There was no equivocation around that. You were saying that last night on the television and through the news. Scottish Labour Party is saying quite clearly there will be no scrapping of the Barnett formula. How on earth can anyone take any of the pledges that you are making seriously when you have been caught out in the last week of this campaign? And ultimately, the Labour Party.
Let Andrew Arty Davis continue his question.
But ultimately, the funding of public services is a vital consideration for the electorate on Thursday. We have put a funding floor in place with agreement of the Welsh Government that guarantees that funding in Wales will not go under £115 for every £100 that is spent in England. You yesterday said Labour Party policy was to get rid of the Barnett formula. Scottish Labour Party is saying that is not the case, and all that will come forward is a consultation. Isn't it a fact that all Labour policies are just built on sand, First Minister?
Isn't it a shame that he will not support a situation where Wales gets the funding it deserves? Isn't it a shame? It tells you of the way that they think. And isn't it a shame that he was not there to make these points in subsequent debates on television? I'm sure that it was possible to see a live broadcast from Gran Canaria to make sure that his view was put forward as somebody who claims to be the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. And as he rightly said, the Secretary of State was unwilling to take part in the third debate because he pulled out because I was in it. That's what we heard. He was not willing to come and debate, and other leaders as well, and to put forward the Conservative case. He has some brass neck to come before this chamber and say that somehow things are a shambles on these benches when, on 3 different occasions, the Tories couldn't even field the same person in 3 different debates. So lacking in confidence were they in their own case. And we've seen over the past few days shambles after shambles after shambles in the Conservative Party. I invite him to read the UK Labour manifesto where it's absolutely clear, where it says that there will be a new funding formula that reflects the needs of different nations and regions of the UK, a commitment we have made, a commitment his party has run from.
Arweinydd Plaid Cymru.
Plaid Cymru leader Leanne Wood.
First Minister, on Thursday people will go to the polls in what is a very important election. It's been noted how you've airbrushed your UK party leader out of your campaign and how you have issued a separate manifesto. There are 2 Labour manifestos, 3 if you count the Scottish manifesto that was referred to earlier. In the interests of openness, transparency and honesty, just before people cast their votes on Thursday, will you tell us, are Labour MPs elected in Wales next Thursday bound by the commitments in your manifesto or by the commitments in your UK Labour leaders' manifesto?
By the Welsh Labour manifesto, because there is no dichotomy between the 2 manifestos. I mean, the leader of Plaid Cymru might have noticed, but devolution occurred in 1999, and on that basis, it's not possible for political parties who have a presence in the different nations of the UK to produce a manifesto that's exactly the same. We reflect the reality of devolution, and that's exactly what we've done in our manifesto. There is no contradiction in terms of the Welsh Labour manifesto and the UK Labour manifesto, save in areas that are devolved, where the decisions regarding those policies are made here.
You say there are no differences. First Minister, there are differences in the 2 manifestos, but I'll come back to that now shortly. Your party leader has been described variously as the man who broke the Labour Party, that was Chris Bryant, a lunatic at the top of the Labour Party, that was Owen Smith, hard left and out of touch with the electorate, that was Stephen Kinnock. Would you like to associate yourself with any of those statements about your leader, or would you like to take this opportunity to distance yourself from the views of those Welsh Labour candidates?
Well, let me make it very, very clear. Jeremy Corbyn will make an excellent Prime Minister. He will offer hope for Britain, as opposed to the endless succession of Tory cuts that we have seen from the benches opposite. We would see a government that would take Britain forward, would deliver a proper devolved settlement for Wales based on the legislation that we have put forward. While at the same time, we see Plaid Cymru looking at creating a coalition with the Tories in Conwy.
Trot that one out, don't they, when they've got nothing left?
We
First
do.
Minister, you must be very desperate to play on people's...
Okay, we do need to hear what's being asked and the answers. So let's all calm down and look forward to next week.
I want to come back to this point about the differences in the manifestos between you and your UK Labour leader. 0 hours contracts banned, tuition fees scrapped, the railways in public hands. That's what's in the UK manifesto. Labour is in power here, and none of these policies have been implemented. Can we get a commitment from you now that you will give your unmitigated support to those policies now that it's official policy of your party, or are you accepting that you are about to mislead the electorate on Thursday?
There's nothing more misleading than a party that says we want more money from Westminster, but at the same time says we want independence from Westminster. That is a fundamental contradiction. But she asks 3 questions. First of all, if the money is made available to us to look again at student finance, then we will do so. Of course we will. 0 hours contracts are in the main not devolved. We do not support 0 hours contracts. They have grandstanded on that. We, as a party, want to make sure that we see a society that is fair, that is just, and where people have the opportunities they need to flourish in the future. Only a Labour government in the UK can do that. Plaid Cymru can deliver nothing.
Arweinydd Grŵp UK
Of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
I'll carry the First Minister with me in saying that the last 10 minutes has proved, if nothing else, that the time for sterile political point scoring is long past in this general election campaign to have any positive effect either way. And therefore we should concentrate more on building a successful economic future for Wales, collectively, supporting other parties where that's necessary. And to that extent, I'd like to refer back to the question which Adam Price asked immediately before party leaders' questions. And I take what the First Minister said in response to his supplementary about how the government must conduct proper due diligence of the current proposal. But the Auditor General's report on the initial funding of this project contains a catalogue of opportunities for due diligence to be conducted over the last 5 years, starting with the calling in of the planning application in 2012, which was approved by Carl Sargent on account of its socio-economic benefits. In 2014, we had the initial funding of £16 million for the development of the project. Then we had a public inquiry on the deregistration of the common land. Then in April 2016, Edwina Hart rejected the first guarantee application. In July 2016, Ken Skates rejected the second guarantee proposal, which then led to intensive discussions with officials on a variety of important issues. And then this year, in January, we had the fully funded term sheets provided by the company. And we were told due diligence was to last 3 to 4 weeks. That was then extended to 6 weeks, and then it's been extended further. And the First Minister today has given us, I hope, an end date for the consideration of this proposal. So we've had endless due diligence, and I know that the Auditor General has made a number of important criticisms of the process. I don't want to go into that now, because I want to see this project succeed, and I hope at the end of the day that the Welsh Government is going to give it the go-ahead. But does he not think that this tortuous process is far too long, even though this is a massive project for the future? Its transformative potential is so great that we should have got on with this much more diligently than we have.
Well, with regard to a planning application or the deregistration of common land, due diligence wouldn't occur at that point, because they are not applications, they are planning applications, and they are applications that are not to do with the robustness or not of a particular business. That comes later on. I make no apologies for the due diligence process. It is robust. It has taken longer than we would have wanted. That's because information has had to be sought at certain points, and that information has been provided. I've given a date to members by which we wanted to take that decision now, and I've indicated to members I would like to see this project proceed, but it has to proceed on a basis that is sustainable and where the risk to the public purse is acceptable.
Well, I thank the First Minister for that reply. I see also on the BBC website today that the government has been in talks with a view to getting the Golf Open Championships to come to Wales, and the Tour de France as well. And also there's a possibility, if the Brussels Stadium is not ready in time, that the Euro 2020 could be held in Wales. And I would support the government's interest in that. Ken Skates has quite rightly said that Wales has great potential to host major new events that haven't yet been to Wales. The Circuit of Wales has already got the contract for the Motor Grand Prix, and that's yet another opportunity for us in Wales to show what we can do as a host for major world sports projects. And therefore, this fits into the government's overall objective for making Wales a major international sports venue, and that's another reason for us to see the success of this project.
I can only repeat what I've already said to him, that of course we recognise the potential of the circuit, and I've said that it's something we would want to support, but it has to be based on a model that is sound, and a model that works well for both private and public investors.
And it's also important to note that there is no request for any public money to be invested in this project up front, and that all that is being sought is a guarantee, which is a commercial guarantee, which the government will be paid to finance, which will be called only as and when all the construction on the site is completed, so there will be physical assets against which the loan can be secured. And on an annual basis, the maximum risk to the Welsh Government is said to be £8.5 to £9 million a year, many, many years in the future for a limited period of time. So the risk is secured on 100% of the assets, but the guarantee is going to apply to less than half of the value of those assets. So on the face of it, this does look a very good deal. And whilst I appreciate we have to go through the due diligence process, It is, I think, of vital importance to the economic prosperity, not just of South East Wales, but the whole of South Wales, that this project does get to go ahead.
Well, this has all been considered as part of the due diligence process. There's no difference to my mind in being asked to provide money up front and being asked to provide a guarantee. The commitment is the same. Indeed, with a guarantee, there is a need for more robustness in terms of making sure that that guarantee is unlikely to be called on. I mean, I think of every guaranteed, but if I can use that, but it's important that as much is done to minimise any risk to the public purse. That's what we're looking at as part of this process. And as I said before, it's a project that has potential. And I think this has helped the circuit themselves. A robust testing process of their model is good for them. They are able then to think carefully about what they think will be sustainable in the longer term. And on that basis, we look forward now, when all the information is in, we trust this week to be able to take a decision over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Question 3, Rhina.
Question 3, Rhina Bjorwerth. Will the First Minister make a statement on transport links in Ynys Môn?
Well, we are committed to investing in a modern and high-quality integrated transport system to ensure Ynys Môn is a competitive and connected component of the Welsh and UK economy.
Thank you. It's some 2.5 years since the former Minister for the Economy confirmed to me that work was ongoing to try and deliver plans to improve the links between the A55 and the Port of Holyhead, where there are major traffic jams at the moment, particularly when lorries try to leave the port. Now, people ask me often when they will see this road completed, and I share their concerns about the delays. That connection was never truly completed. The A55 was built to the surrounds of the port, but not in and out of the port. Now, I understand that we need other investments too in the port, and I would appreciate a sign of commitment from the government to proceed with renovation work on the barrage or the cob in the longer term. But can we have a short-term commitment here and now that this crucial connection will see the light of day, in line with the aspirations of people living in that part of Holyhead who are concerned that there is a risk in the current situation, as well as it being a nuisance, of course?
Well, discussions have taken place with Network Rail on this, and the Minister has been involved in those. This is part of the considerations on the development of the port itself. And, of course, as regards the island, Ynys Môn, we are now looking at a third crossing on the Menai Strait. And the next phase of development has begun, and a route will be declared in May 2018, and so that is progressing in the way in which you would expect.
You referred to the third Menai crossing, and clearly congestion on the existing Menai and Britannia bridges has been a problem for many years. It's a decade since a Welsh Government commissioned report identified 8 options, including a new bridge, but that didn't go forward to delivery. You said last May that you'd promised to make the third crossing your priority for North Wales if you form a government. And of course, your government announced before Christmas last year that it had appointed consultants to look at routes for a proposed new crossing to Anglesey, which could begin by 2021 if it gets the go-ahead. Can you provide an assurance that we're not going to have a rerun of 2007, when we had similar assurances after a commissioned report was produced for the Welsh Government, and that you envisage this going ahead on the basis of the situation remaining as it currently does?
We have appointed ACOM to support our next phase of the development work. That will result in the announcement of a preferred route in May 2018. Our aim is to see the third Menai crossing open in 2022.
Question 4, Susie Davis.
Question 4, Susie Davis.
Will the First Minister provide an update on discussions that the Welsh Government has had regarding the Ford plans?
Those discussions are ongoing. I met with the CEO of Ford Europe before Christmas. We are aware of the plans for the facility, and we're working closely with all stakeholders to guarantee the future of the site and its workforce.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. In March, your Cabinet Secretary told us that Ford management had told him that employment numbers would remain broadly the same until 2021. And he also said that he thought that Ford management could communicate better with its employees and its members regarding the long-term objectives for the plant. Since then, can you tell us whether Ford has kept you informed whether there have actually been any falls in order numbers, and if there have been any falls, how the guaranteed number of workers has been deployed at the plant, bearing in mind, of course, they'll have individual expertise, and, of course, whether they've been getting regular updates on that long-term objective and achievement against that?
Yes, they have. There are a number of possibilities that are being explored at the Ford plant. We shouldn't forget that in September of last year, Ford did announce that it would invest $100 million in the site from late 2018. I think it's fair to say that the biggest challenge that the plant faces is Brexit. Every single engine that leaves that plant is exported into the European market, and so the terms that surround the exporting of those engines will be important as far as the plant is concerned. But we are working very closely with the company. I've met in my capacity as an Assembly member several times with them and with the Works Council, and as First Minister, of course, have taken an interest in ensuring that the plant continues to operate in the future and continues to employ similar numbers in the future.
Lloyd.
Diolch yn fawr, Prif Llywydd.
Thank you very much, Llywydd. Further to that response, First Minister, last month the European Chief of Ford warned that the future of the company in the UK depended on the ability of the government in London to ensure transitional agreements with the European Union if the UK leaves that economic bloc before a new trade deal is signed. Have you met with Ford and the government in London to discuss this issue further since that time?
I've met with the Ford CEO and also Ford Europe, and there are discussions taking place between the Minister and officials. It is true to say that there are concerns about what will happen following the United Kingdom's departure from Europe. Nobody believes that there'll be any kind of complete agreement in March 2019, and so the transitional arrangements will be crucial for Ford as with other manufacturers. This is something that Ford is discussing. They've been talking to us about it, and of course our standpoint is this, that it's vital for Ford and a number of other companies in Wales that they have admission to the European unfettered admission to the European market.
First Minister, make a statement on the health service in Wales.
Our priority for the health service throughout Wales is to provide high-quality care to Welsh patients in the right place and at the right time by continuing to protect investment, drive performance and deliver the range of commitments set out in taking Wales forward.
I have to be honest with you, First Minister. I stand here today not very confident of that, because I'll tell you why. Since your own government interventions and special measures were placed on Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board 2 years ago, 227% more patients are waiting over 12 hours in A&E. 194 complaints came in last year. This is actually 30% of the total of all complaints in Wales. We have a 7,000 increase in patients now waiting for over 36 weeks for oral surgery. 5,000% increase for orthopaedics and trauma. I have repeatedly asked questions of you here and in writing, and your Cabinet Secretary, on behalf of many of my constituents who you are failing and who are struggling as a result, many in pain for these failings. And I've asked you for detail as to how you are monitoring performance outcomes as part of your special measures. Will you tell me at what point you believe that your government interventions, at a cost already of over £10 million, have actually resulted in any material improvements? And at what stage do you intend to actually pull the process of special measures, believing that your interventions have worked, that they've been successful, that we have the relevant and necessary...
Going way beyond a question now. Can you bring it to an...
You've allowed longer questions.
Show some respect. Ask your complete your question.
Right, my question is, at what point do you believe that you will withdraw special measures, believing that your interventions have helped in any way? Because I can tell you now, my constituents...
Question is over. Please reply, First Minister.
The Health Board is not yet ready to be moved out of special measures. I can say, for example, that the Health Board has virtually eliminated diagnostic waits of over 8 weeks, with March 2017 being 94% lower than March 2016. This is the lowest the Health Board has been since the standard was introduced in April 2010. Cancer performance in the Health Board is consistently amongst the best in Wales. March performance figures are 92.5% for the 62-day target. The best performance is January 2016 and 98.6% for the 31-day target. I can say that BCU has significantly improved the percentage of CAMS referrals seen within 28 days, from 18% in April 2016 to 89% in March 2017. The number of delayed transfers of care in Betsy Cadwallader reduced again in April, down to 90. There have been reductions in 5 out of 6 months since October 2016, and that figure is 41% lower in October and 40% better than the same period last year. That's a real achievement. Just to give you some examples, given winter pressures and year-on-year increases in demand for health and social services. If there's one thing I can say, that as I've spoken to people on the doorstep all across the north of Wales, the last thing they want is the Tories in charge and Jeremy Hunt in charge.
Dawn Bowden.
First Minister, a couple of months ago, the Naylor report was published, and the report highlights the dire state of the NHS estates capability in England. Theresa May has indicated that she will action the report's recommendations, which includes selling off many parts of the NHS estate in England as part of a process including a 2-for-1, buy one, get one free deal, if you like, to tempt private companies. Can you assure me, First Minister, that here in Wales we will maintain the publicly owned status of our NHS estate and not follow the route proposed by the Tories in selling off the estate to mask their gross underfunding of the NHS in England?
Well, we see in England delayed transfers of care going up, we see waiting times going up. We see the great popularity of Jeremy Hunt, of course, as the Secretary of State. He's involved in the streets, we know that. We saw the doctor strike that took place in England. We have no plans at all to follow what is suggested in England, namely to sell off large chunks of the NHS in order to plug a gap in funding that the Tories themselves have created.
Simon Thomas. Question 6, Jane Bryant.
Question 6, Jane Bryant.
How does the Welsh Government plan to raise awareness about dementia in Wales?
Well, we're already running annual campaigns about how individuals can reduce their risk of developing dementia. And the Dementia Strategic Action Plan, due to be published in the autumn, will set out our further plans to raise awareness about dementia in Wales.
Diolch, First Minister. There are an estimated 45,000 people in Wales living with dementia. If the current trend continues, the number of people living with the disease will increase by over 40% over the next 12 years. Raising awareness and understanding the disease is crucial. I was proud to present South Wales Fire and Rescue Newport stations with their Dementia Friends logo, and particularly pleased that St Joseph's High School in my constituency has become the first dementia-friendly secondary school in Wales. Will you join with me in congratulating both St Joseph's School and South Wales Fire and Rescue, and look at how the Welsh Government can work closely with others to promote this free training, particularly amongst our young people?
I do very much welcome the example that's been given there. We do work with other organisations, of course, such as the Alzheimer's Society and others, to maintain the momentum of the Dementia Friends and Dementia Supportive Communities campaigns, so that more and more people understand what it's like to live with dementia, as well as being able to recognise its symptoms. And that means, of course, making sure that we do look at how we can make more buildings and environments dementia-friendly to enable people to live as normal a life as they can for as long as they can.
Paul Davis.
Prif Weinidog,
First Minister, a year-long study by the Seal Hain Educational Trust on the community farm network has noted a number of concerns about the impact of dementia in rural areas that we need to tackle, including lack of awareness of the support available in rural areas, as well as the difficulty in accessing support services. So in light of those concerns, what additional work is the Welsh Government doing to raise awareness of the support available for those living in more rural and isolated communities? And can you also tell us one specific measure that your government has put in place over the last 12 months to assist people in rural communities who have dementia?
Well, we, of course, consider any new report that shows how we can improve the services in rural areas. But across Wales, of course, we've funded an information pack as regards living with dementia, and that has been welcomed by the professionals working in the field, people suffering with dementia and their families and their carers. And, of course, there is a helpline available on a daily basis. It's available 24/7 throughout the year, and it can give people emotional support to those that have been diagnosed with dementia and those who care for them. And those are some of the ways in which we've ensured that there's support available, not only for the sufferers, but for their carers too.
Question 7, Hannah Blythen.
Doing to increase the number of affordable homes in North East Wales?
Well, we support a range of housing tenures in the North East of Wales and indeed across Wales, and we'll continue to invest in social housing and affordable home ownership. In addition, we are bringing forward new programmes aiming to make buying a home more accessible.
Thank you. Thank you, First Minister. I welcome this government's commitment to creating new, decent and affordable homes. And we're actually seeing this commitment put into action in Flintshire. We've seen the partnership of a Labour Council and a Welsh Labour Government working together to see the first new council house in a generation, 82 new council houses, where I had the pleasure of actually going to visit the first few that are now open with my colleague David Hanson and with the Cabinet Secretary for Local Government. And these are really amazing, brilliant new homes for people in the heart of Flint, in the heart of the community. First Minister, will you today give a further concrete commitment, if you'd excuse us upon, to build on this and ensure much greater numbers of affordable, decent homes under this government?
Well, I very much welcome the building of new homes, particularly by an innovative council such as Flintshire. I've seen the homes, indeed I've seen them twice in the past fortnight for reasons that she'd be familiar with. But it's an innovative approach that's being taken in Flintshire. We want to see more of that approach across the whole of Wales, and Flintshire are ahead in their approach to council house building. I want others to follow the example of a good Labour-led authority.
David Rees.
Question 8, David Rees.
What recent discussions has the First Minister had with the UK Government regarding the future of the steel industry in Wales?
The UK Government has lost interest in the steel industry in Wales, is my analysis at the moment, sadly. We will continue to press the UK Government to play its full part in supporting a long-term future for the steel industry in Wales, as the Welsh Government has done.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister, and I think it's telling probably in the answer you've given. But last week I met with senior managers at the Talbot Works, and we were actually discussing the progress that's being made within the sector and particularly in the plant. I think we all came to the conclusion that, unfortunately, there are still serious challenges ahead of the sector here in the UK, particularly in light of Brexit and the possible WTO tariffs that may be imposed if we have a leave without any deal. The high overcharges of energy costs are still facing us. And, of course, the global market, which may be shrinking because the US 232 sanctions may be going on ahead on imported steel in the US. Now, steelworkers at that plant are actually breaking records in production. They are delivering on the ground, and they're showing there's a future for steel. Unfortunately, the UK Government so far has failed these workers. They failed our steel industry. They haven't shown scant regard in the industrial strategy, and there is no mention of steel in the manifesto for this election. Now, do you agree with me that, just like the Welsh Government here has shown, our steel industry is safer in the hands of a UK Labour Government on June the 8th?
Absolutely. We have worked hard to ensure, with Tata, and in fact Tata have listened, to ensure a sustainable future for our steel industry in Wales. There is a threat of Brexit. I mean, a hard Brexit would mean, in effect, that the only free market that UK Steel was able to access would be the UK itself. The UK is too small to provide a robust market. I hope that isn't the case. We all want to see a situation where the UK can export freely to as many markets as possible. But I pay tribute to the workers in Tata. They have shown that then when going gets tough, then the tough get going. They are amongst the most productive workers that we have in Britain. They have a long and proud history, and they know that when it comes to the support that they can expect, then Welsh Labour will deliver that support.
Question now, Darren Miller.
Question 9, Darren Miller.
The First Minister make a statement on what the Welsh Government is doing to improve primary care services in North Wales.
Well, we continue to work with the Health Board and other partners to undertake a range of actions to modernise and improve primary care services that are safe and sustainable and as close to people's homes as possible.
First Minister, you'll be aware that the British Medical Association was warning many years ago, in fact as far back as 2013, that we needed to be training more doctors in Wales, and they were warning of a crisis in GP recruitment. You dismissed those assertions at that time, yet since then we've seen over a dozen surgeries across Wales handing in their contracts saying that they want to terminate contracts, usually because of recruitment problems, the most recent of which is in Colwyn Bay, my own constituency. The second in Colwyn Bay in just 6 months. This is a big concern to the thousands of people registered with the Russell Dean surgery in my constituency. It is at the moment, a purpose-built primary care centre which it shares with another local surgery, and there are concerns that the withdrawal of the Russell Dean contract may actually put the viability of that new facility at risk. Can I ask, why didn't you listen to the BMA when they raised their concerns? Why didn't you increase sufficiently the number of GP training posts in Wales? You've been responsible for the lack of GP training over the years in Wales. You've been at the helm. Nobody else can't blame the UK government for this. So what action are you taking to rescue the situation in my own constituency in Colwyn Bay? And furthermore, what action are you taking to make sure that Wales has sufficient numbers of GPs going forward?
On the first point, what is important is the service that's provided to those who need it. It doesn't have to be provided with the same model across the whole of Wales. You'll be aware that in Prestatyn, 2 surgeries did the same thing. They handed in their contracts. What was put in place was better than what was there before, a far more comprehensive service run directly by the Health Board. And I know the Health Board is looking to provide a similar service to the people of Colwyn Bay, understandably. They want to know what the future of the service is, but it doesn't have to be on the contractor model. Increasingly, we know that trainee GPs, many of them, are not interested in buying into a practice. They want to be salaried. Some will want to buy into a practice, but increasingly they come out of university, they don't want to find the money in order to buy into a practice, and that is an issue that the medical profession itself must look at in terms of what the model should be in the future. The contractor model will still be an important part of GP delivery in the future, but increasingly we are seeing the younger ones particularly want to become salaried and are happy to work for a health board direct. In terms of recruitment, you will know in October 2016 we launched a new international campaign to promote Wales as a place for doctors to work and train. That national campaign has resulted in a 16% increase in the number of GP training places filled so far compared to last year. As part of that campaign, an incentive scheme is in place to recruit people to some areas. Trainees who take up a training place in a specified area will receive some financial support, and that is an example of us delivering to make sure that the supply of GPs is at least sufficient in the years to come.
Ac yn ola, cwestiwn 10.
And finally, question 10, Di Lloyd. Thank you. Will the First Minister make a statement on follow-up waiting times for outpatient eye care services in Welsh hospitals?
We expect all patients to be seen in order of clinical priority within our waiting times targets. And of course, Welsh Government, the NHS and third sector partners are working together to improve the delivery of ophthalmology services, both new and follow-up patients.
Thank you for that response. Now, in the cross-party group meeting on site, we discussed data that showed that health boards, the length and breadth of Wales, had 37,247 patients who were suffering delays in terms of their follow-up appointments in ophthalmology. Now, clinical investigations have shown that some 90% of these patients are at risk of permanent damage to their sight. That's 33,351 individuals in Wales who are at risk of losing their sight. Now, do you agree that this is a disgrace? And would you agree to publish the number of patients who are suffering delays to their follow-up treatment as part of your regular data on the performance of the health service?
Well, we have seen an increase in the number of people who want ophthalmological treatment, but a scheme has been established, led by the clinicians themselves, in order to transform the way in which the services are delivered. Health boards have stated that arrangements are in place to ensure that more clinics are available, to ensure that people can receive the treatment. And of course, that is very effective in getting rid of the backlog that for those patients that need the treatment now rather than having to wait. And that means that the waiting time for wet AMD is now under a fortnight, according to the guidelines that have been given to the health boards.
Thank you, First Minister. The next item on our agenda is the business.